I got all excited by David West's presentation. I heard his historical basketball league, and I thought it was one for old guys like me. Yeah. Too bad. So, dude, you're a mogul.
Try to.
Zoom?
Yes.
Zoom
was fun. Carta's the big one. Carta's the big one.
Yeah, no, that's awesome.
Should we keep secrets, or should we tell everybody?
Yeah. Go ahead.
No, I'm asking you.
Oh, yeah.
Do you keep secrets, or do you let people know?
Oh, go ahead.
No, do you keep the secrets as far as what you're invested in?
Oh, yes, definitely.
Okay, so I'm going to tell about Carta. No, I don't know what Carta is.
Yeah, okay. I read it in the press, though, so and this Rudy guy validated it.
Yes, he likes to hide.
Yeah, which is great. It's been so interesting to me watching your development as a tech investor. I went from a mentor to an interviewer in like 4 years, so congratulations. What got you interested in tech originally?
Well, I've told the story a few times before. Those that don't know, it simply started as an E-Trade account. But before that, it started with like fear. And I got a good friend who was deep in the Bible, and he said, fear is the beginning of wisdom. That's actually straight from the Bible. Fear is the beginning of wisdom. So when you come in the NBA, as a professional athlete in general, the first lesson you get is, don't be like this. And then they have a clip of somebody who made $100 million and now has nothing, yep, and is trying to figure out life and navigate after blowing through all that money. So get that scare, and then you start paying attention to different investment vehicles and how to save money in stocks and bonds and the different ways that CDs maybe 1%, and then you get the right stock, but it's a little bit risky in terms of losing. And it led me to wanting to figure it out on my own, take a small piece of my wealth and go to an E-Trade account and start trading. And when you lose, you try to figure out why you lost, and then when you get good gains, you try to figure out why you got gains, and then you figure out why you have to get taxed on those gains. So it was a really knowledgeable experience. But I just found myself investing in a lot of tech companies, and then you start thinking beyond that, like, okay, these tech companies make money, and then you figure out, okay, here's a new wave of IPOs coming up. And it was like, well, wait, what was going on before the IPO? And then that's when you start going backwards, and you're like, and then, you start figuring out, who's investing. You figure out the private sector.
Yep.
And then once I found out about the private sector, there's so many things that go on in that world. And from there, we just got to work and send a lot of emails out. And only a couple responded, and only one or two embraced us with open arms, and you were one of the many that, you were the only one that didn't reject us. Early on, yeah, which is there. Actually, my good buddy Josh Koppelman, when you were in Philadelphia, he didn't reject you, right? He didn't reject us, but we just had this unique connection.
Okay.
So I'm giving you a lot of credit. I know you don't like it, except.
I know, I don't like credit, but we'll do that. And then you put yourself out there in sending that letter. I mean, just kind of like, okay, I'm gonna, dive in. What gave you the courage?
Well, I've always tried to align myself with folks who would challenge me, folks who would hold me accountable, and then sometimes you just let in life, you meet people who you need. And then Rudy did an awesome job of really pushing me throughout this whole journey and say, hey, you can't just rely on being comfortable where you're at. You have so much potential outside of the game of basketball, and I'm gonna try to maximize that potential, and it's going to be hard work. So just fortunate enough to meet somebody like that believed in that I could do this, and I believed in myself. Got to work, did my homework, and it's easy for a representation of an athlete to say, hey, this guy does such and such, and he'll do his homework, and he'll represent your brand to the fullest, and he'll be knowledgeable of the product, so on and so forth. But that's not always the case. That's another stigma that we used to have as athletes. Now we're coming around. We're more business savvy, and I feel like we're holding ourselves accountable on and off the court, and we're making a splash. And this is why we have what we have right now. We have a group of athletes who want to come in and become more knowledgeable in this space, and they could take it. You know what, tech is everywhere now. It's disrupting everything. So this is at the forefront of leading many different sectors, and the players realize that.
No, which is great. And watching how this thing has grown. I remember the first year it was in a small little
Yes.
room in a hotel, and it's blossoming. It's great. What advice do you have for the players here who are trying to make that same leap?
Well, I would tell the players just soak in all the information. It's similar to being a rookie. And when you're a rookie, they say, you're not going to play as much as you think. You're not going to be the man anymore. You're a boy amongst men, and you have to just soak up all the information, from learning how to set your practice routine, to learning how to watch film, to learning how to scout your opponent. As a professional athlete, you have the work ethic, you have the wherewithal to be successful and to get to heights that no one's ever been. So it's already in you. Now it's just about taking that and putting that energy into another space. And confidence is key. You have to have confidence that you can accomplish anything. And I will say, having success on the basketball court and doing some of the things I did, it has given me confidence to want to have success outside of that, because you don't want to just be stuck in that lane. And I think as a culture, we've been comfortable with having success where they only allow us to embrace it, and now we want to break through those barriers. And I wouldn't say a pride thing, but a sense of self as doing something bigger and doing something that becomes generational. And as you know, you invested in a lot of brands like Walker and Company and Tristan Walker. His thing was about the spending power of African Americans, and we don't even understand that. But we're having these conversations now where we all understand more about us. We understand that just our spending power alone puts us in another realm in terms of if we could get together and collectively do something, not just with buying products, but just in brain power in general.
Yep.
David West was just up here. We were just talking about it with the Historic Basketball League. When we come together, our culture and the Warriors, strength in numbers, we can do a lot of damage.
You can. So I get a number of pro athletes. I noticed two modes. There's one which is the off season. I'm going to lift and play video games, and there's the other. It's the off season. I'm going to get in shape, but I'm also going to prepare for the future. You seem to do the second.
There is no off season. That's like become it. But I think like I said, players are becoming smarter. We're using our off time more wisely.
Yeah.
You see guys starting to own themselves a little bit more. You don't see the endorsement has changed tremendously. It's no longer that transaction in terms of there were cookie cutters. If you were an agency, you sign players to an endorsement deal, you just take the name off. Everything else is exactly the same.
Yep.
Now you're seeing guys be more creative. You're seeing LeBron James, what he's been able to do.
Yep.
You're seeing Steph Curry. These guys are going into production. These guys are executive producers. You look all across the board where guys are taking more ownership of their brand and not just selling themselves to something. They're actually having ownership in it. They're having equity in different types of companies.
It's great to see, which is great. What do you think is similar between being a professional athlete and being an investor?
So what I've learned is, which I enjoy the parallel of, is being a general manager and being a VC, a venture capitalist. And what you're trying to do is, you have your team that you're overseeing, and you got to get all the right pieces aligned, and you give them all the resources to maximize their talent. So if you're a VC and you got a kid who's got a startup, and you try to get him to a certain point, and then at a certain point you realize, okay, he might be good at running a company with 10 people, but he's not the right CEO for a company that now has risen to 500 employees, and then that's going to get to 10,000 hopefully one day, that needs a different type of CEO, and then you have your CFO, and then you have your human resources, and there's so many different pieces that come into play. Like, you need the right trainer on the basketball court to work with the guys, you need the right coach, you need the right assistant coach, offensive coordinator, defensive coordinator. It's all about team building, getting the right personalities in place. So all those are parallels in terms of you got a board seat. It's like having a board seat and being a GM, and the trickle-down effect and getting all the right pieces in place to ultimately win a championship.
Which is good. Another parallel for me is managing your psychology.
Yes.
Because a part that's not really appreciated for me in investing is half the investments don't work.
Right.
And so I'm used to, as a athlete and an operator, my hit rate was better than 50%.
Yeah.
And it's some of you have a public screw up where, hey, fab.com went to zero. You kind of feel like shit. And then it's like, then does that affect your risk appetite going forward? So that for me felt like a parallel with I had a crappy game, I
Right.
lost the game or whatever. Right. Now I have to get back and.
And I actually, it's kind of like, you talked about Fab went to zero, but you were able to have Airbnb and you had the likes of Line. So,
Yeah.
you're the ones that didn't go so well, you got a proven track record.
Yeah, Bill Gurley, who's my board, you were here earlier today,
Yes.
was my board member when I first came an investor. I said, any advice? He goes, yep, just remember you can only lose one time your money, but you can make
Yes.
way more time the money than that, which is there. What did you see in Zoom?
Zoom. So Zoom was interesting. So I had a really good sit down with Eric, the CEO, and he's really into basketball. His son holds a record for like high school three-point percentage, high school three-pointers made. So he's really into basketball. So he really understood my role on the basketball team. And I don't get too many people that understand my role and how it leads to success doing the little things right. And we had a really good conversation. And as you know, sometimes it's not what you invest in, it's who you invest in.
Absolutely.
And I just saw this really smart person who had been in that space with 8 other companies before. So he sees the ins and outs, and Bill was up talking earlier about Travis. Travis had, failed really bad once and then pretty much failed another time. So he was just getting there, and I feel like Eric had been throughout so much, and he had success before. And then when you got into you get deeper into it and what Zoom actually is, on the surface you say, well, how many companies have video conferencing? Like that's already been in place. You got Skype, yep. And then you got major players already in that space, from Facebook to Amazon Web Services, yep, to Google. So all these places are there. So who have you ever seen have success in an existing space? Like no one can get into that if you have your aggregators, the top aggregators already leading that space and already there currently. And what he was able to do was go into that space and do it better than all of them. And what you figure out is if you do something the best, you'll eventually be at the leader. Sometimes, we were talking early, and the question I heard was, how much can the investor have a say in the success of the company? And just pushing them with all their money and say, hey, this company's going to do well. We're going to throw all our money at it. Yeah. Well, sometimes it's the perfect product or the best product wins, and he had the best product and it won.
He did. Where are you focusing your energies now? That's an enterprise company. You doing
Yes.
enterprise or consumer?
Well, a little bit of both. But I went to a Park City conference 3 years ago with Morgan Stanley, and it was a tech enterprise company.
Yep.
And the word enterprise kept going around. And I'm like, I have no idea what that word even means. But it was another testament to Rudy and saying, you go figure it out. Yep. So I was able to meet with, play golf with Ryan Smith at Qualtrics. Okay. Qualtrics sold he was supposed to IPO on a Tuesday.
Yep.
And I got our whole team in on a friends and family deal. And Steve Kerr didn't know what it was quite. And Steve went to his financial guy and came back the next day and say, where do I sign up?
Okay.
He was really excited. Steve was like, yo, are we in? Are we all good? I'm like, Coach, we in. He was like, how much? What's the max I can put in? He was all in. His people that did the work, they was like, this is the company. And I got a few of my other teammates in, and it was supposed to go public on a Tuesday. I think the Wall Street Journal came out the Friday before. SAP buys Qualtrics for $8 billion. And it's Ryan, his brother, Jared, and his father.
Yep.
They get $1.7 billion each.
Yeah.
And no one has a clue of what this company does. And we talk about some simplicity, and we had Tim Brown earlier with All Birds, and he's talking about he disrupted the footwear space with simplicity, and all Qualtrics is those simple surveys when you buy something and you get an email and say, how was your experience? and $8 billion to split up between 3 people mainly, and the guys that have been there from the beginning.
So you guys were investors for like 8 minutes?
No, that was a Friday, so the Tuesday after was supposed to be the.
Oh, you didn't.
So we
get
didn't
in.
get nothing.
Oh no, no.
But to go back to your question, I had met Ryan before all this, and we played golf together, and I'm trying to figure out what enterprise means.
Yeah.
And I met some good people there, and this is how I figured out. I met the guy that wrote the book Subscribe too, Tien. Tien wrote Subscribe.
Yep.
And his company is he helps
Zora.
Zora helps companies who are subscription-based.
Subscription billing. Yep.
Startups. So that's when I learned what enterprise was basically all the companies that had run on the cloud or they direct-to-consumer e-commerce. They all have to, the companies have to be run on platforms, and that's what enterprise software is. And I figured this is where everyone's running their companies. This is how businesses work, and tech has disrupted everything, and they need to run on something. And these companies need to be able to, they need help to be ran, and those services are provided by enterprise companies.
Yeah, no, we've seen a lot of, since I've been, in 8 years since I've been a venture capitalist, the book on enterprise used to be, you could get wins, but they'd be small.
Right.
And then you look at Zoom, and we're investors in Slack, and PagerDuty, and Okta. They're all $10, $20 billion companies.
Salesforce.
Salesforce being
yes.
from Workday, yeah, which is awesome. Jumia,
Yes.
you're on the board of the leading African e-commerce company?
Yes, that was exciting just to, you do certain things and you're like, oh, why did I get here? You have to look back sometimes, and that one is one of those where Jumia is the Amazon of Africa, and it runs on 12 countries in Africa, and it's doing really well. Just IPO'd a couple months ago, and it's doing really well. And being on the board, you're seeing how a lot of things work. We had to go through a short sale fire where somebody was trying to short the stock from a major level, and that got intense and crazy, and everybody's trying to figure out what's going on. But that's been great. I've had meetings with the CEO, Satya, learning how to run a company, learning how to run a publicly traded company, how I could help, because sometimes I'm like, well, how can I help?
Yeah.
But with all the reading and all the news that I'm picking up every single day, all the books that I'm reading within tech, there's been a few times where I'm like, hey, I think this will work. Hey, I think this will work. And one of them that really helped, we talked about Amazon has like a brick and mortar store where they have metrics that look at their products that are sold the most.
Yeah.
They'll plug them in a certain place, and they'll have that product, like the top 20 products that they sell, they'll have brick and mortar stores in certain places where they sell it. So that was one of the pieces of advice that I gave to them, and they're looking to implement that as well. So it's just been a great journey in trying to maximize myself and hold myself accountable and say, hey, there's a bigger picture piece out there, and just shoot for the moon.
I remember my first board. I learned a lot. I mean,
Right,
you
yes.
learn a lot, which is great. You wrote a book.
Yes.
I've read the book. It was good.
Hopefully you like it. That one's still something that like I don't quite comprehend. Like I grew up reading a lot. I read a lot now, so it hasn't quite hit me. It was a long process. It took a long time.
Yeah,
It was to me it felt like more therapeutic. It was like you'd be able to reflect. It was like going to see a therapist, and you can just sit on the couch and talk. But you're able to enjoy some of your successes. I always say winning the 3 championships the way that we did in a short period of time and going to the finals 5 times and so much media attention, they take away the joy. You're not able to enjoy it. It's like you win it, and then like the next morning you wake up like, all right, we just got to go do it again. So going through that, writing a book, I went back to childhood and saw how I was able to be shaped the way I am. My mom had a big influence. I talked about her a lot in the book in terms of she used these really good, but it shaped me to be the person I am. I wouldn't change anything, and she was kind of the pillar of the whole thing. But yeah, that's just part of the process, and I'm looking forward to that being the first one. So that's what I'm most excited about.
You didn't actually talk about your tech experience. You kept it largely on sports this time. Is the next one on tech?
The next one, I have been taking notes, and like this is a big part of it, and talked about leadership, and that's a word that gets used loosely,
Yeah.
But it has to be handled with care and delicately, and I've made mistakes, and then I've learned from them and used them in the right way to help those that I lead into the better direction, and that's what this is a part of. And sometimes you have to be selfless and see a bigger picture in terms of your global impact and your global footprint, and it's not just about you, but the effect you can have with others.
I agree with that. So, last couple of games, you were playing like you're 25.
I figured that part out. You know, you just relax in the regular season and play golf, and you just kind of pace yourself.
With Kerr, with Steph, with.
But I have the luxury to do that because we have the top talent in the league, and then my youth is there's a fountain of youth come May and June.
Yeah, I'm still waiting for it to kick in, which is great. With that, I'd love to open it up to anyone who has a question. Yep. I'll repeat it for you. Go ahead. Yeah. Oh, here it comes.
Can you share a favorite excerpt from the book, whether funniest moment?
The clay thing was pretty damn funny.
Yeah, you can do the clay one.
People like the clay one. So we're doing a group exercise, and like I said, confidence is a big thing. And when you're winning championships or you're competing for championships over and over and over, it can become dull. Like, it can become monotonous. Like, it could get boring, which seems kind of crazy. But for anybody you got to find ways to spice it up.
It's a long season.
It's a long season. We play 500 games in 5 seasons, and no one's close to that in terms of a team, a group. So this one was, how your emotions affect the greater good. So we were like, the time you felt the worst, the time you felt the best. And it was like, Clay, what was your time you felt the best? And Clay tells a story, and I'm right next to him. He tells a story of there was this one time in the game, and I know guys always get on me for taking, kind of wild shots, but Andre passes me the ball, and I catch it, and I'm about to shoot, and Andre goes, Clay, no, what are you doing? So I'm like 50 feet out, and I just shoot it anyway. And I make it, and I go, yeah, F you, Andre, I made it. And I felt so good because he didn't think I could make it. And I'm like, Clay, that was your favorite moment? Like,
3 championships, 5 finals.
He scored 37 points in one quarter. And then Clay knows, like, I like when he shoots.
Yeah.
It's just where he shoots it sometimes. I think he can make it, but that's just knowing your personalities. And we always say, Clay is who we want to come back in the next lifetime as. Somebody who's just free-spirited and just enjoys life unlike no other.
I walked in the Oracle behind him for one of the playoff games, and he's just,
Yes.
just,
That's his bounce.
I'm nervous, and he's like, bouncing around. Any others, or yes, please.
Hi, because you're such a responsible athlete off the court, is it sometimes difficult in the locker room when you see some of your teammates who might be great on court, but they're like not doing as much off court to improve themselves and push themselves?
I mean, well, I ate a bunch of junk this week, so I haven't. We all have our struggles and whatever it is. I had a burger today, but I'm like that vet that gets a lot of respect, but at the same time, I'm the vet that nags a lot. So I'm always on the guys about little things. Like I never knew this, but I caught a few guys like whispering, like, "Yo, here come Dre." One of our guys had a bag of chips, and I'm always on him about eating chips. And it depends on who you are. Your body makeup, your gene set, all that comes into play. So I'm like, listen, you can't eat that because that's not for your body, or this isn't good for you because it's not good for your body. So this particular guy shouldn't be eating chips. So I was around the corner and someone whispered, "Yo, Dre around there," and he kind of threw the chips. I'm like, y'all really talk about me like this? But they all know it's out of love, and the key thing is, like I've been saying this whole talk, is to maximize yourself, and I try to maximize, anybody I come in contact with or I work with, so they know it's out of love.
And please.
Yeah, have you started investing or looking at blockchain, not crypto, but the actual underlying technology of blockchain?
Yes, that I haven't, and I've had a conversation about it for a couple years now. I know JaVale McGee, he was here. He's been talking to me about it for a while. David West. David West was the one that really broke down what blockchain was and how blockchain works. And he's doing a lot of things with renewable energy in Africa. He's done really well. He's helped me throughout this whole process too. I don't mention his name enough, but David West broke down blockchain. So I'm still wary of the whole thing, not in terms of my knowledge, not because I don't think it will work, but I am up on the recent Facebook news and what Facebook is doing, which is, that's when you talk about scale. When you talk about aggregators, they have an opportunity to do something special. And they've done it right because their brand isn't particularly trusted in America, but globally more so it is. But they've added another piece to it where they've taken 100 vendors, Andreessen, Horowitz, Visa, MasterCard, all these vendors are coming in. So when you have that type of scale and that type of network effect and reach, it's too big to fail, as some would say.
Although the government freaked out.
They did.
They did freak out. Time for one more? No more? Time for no more, sorry. With that, I'd like to thank Andre.
Thank you.
For,